for how we want to inspire people, publishers, and marketers in the near future. I want to give that some historical context first. I think all of us know Mark Andreessen, famous for this quote. Guys, hopefully something I agree with. But there's a quote Mark is also famous for that just doesn't get as much press, and that is, the original sin of the internet was not building a payment system into the browser. Why do we care about this? Why is this relevant? Well, because Microsoft failed at this, Netscape failed at this, and they tried really hard with companies like MasterCard and the broader financial system. Thankfully, we're all here today because advertising has really become the payment system for the internet. And in my opinion, advertising, if done well, if done natively, if not interrupting the user, can be awesome. What's further amazing is that 25 years ago, these basic protocols were created like TCP, IP, DNS. We still use them today to power the advertising and the technology that works. And we used additional technologies like cookies and JavaScript, which were never intended to be used for advertising, in very creative ways, like identifying users or creating new and interesting ad experiences in JavaScript. And Web 2.0 was born, and some companies that we know well went on to build some businesses around that as well. So some interesting foundation in terms of context for how we got to today. And wow, what an amazing creative environment we all work in. Many of you here in the room today. But from these humble beginnings, we can do things like, with a 74.23473% probability, know that somebody's in the market for a pair of Air Jordans. That's pretty awesome. The downside to that is, as we heard earlier, you have to hit a thank you page to not see these ads. After you've already purchased, or after maybe you're just not considering that and you went and bought a pair of Allbirds. So there's some downsides there. But when users are exposed to suboptimal experiences, whether it's retargeting on the web, or maybe an ad experience on their mobile phone that really kind of bogs it down, whether they do it consciously or subconsciously, they gravitate to places where that experience is a little better. And that's what's worrisome about the open web. There's all this creativity from this technology that was foundational 25 years ago, but with that creativity, we've taken it slightly too far. So what we've been doing is trying to power native on the web in a way that's not as intrusive, that fits the experience. And I'd argue we have ways to go too, in many ways. And we're also trying to answer some really difficult questions about the future of the web. The first is, this is a 100-year-old business model in advertising. Simply existed offline, now it's online, in much the same way. Is that sustainable for the web long term? By the way, we won't answer these questions here today in 10 minutes, but happy to chat about them afterward. In addition, is people's personal data, can that continue to be the grease of the wheel, so to speak, that drives the industry forward? Third, is a fragmented web. I'd argue a web where you buy stuff. We heard a lot about that company today. A web where you search for stuff, which has been around for a long time. A web where you socialize with others. And then a web for everybody else. Is that a healthy environment to have essentially 4 different kinds of webs? And then lastly, just to hit on one ethical point, because I think this is so important for our industry. If you have the means to pay out of an intrusive ad experience, anybody that's paid for YouTube Premium and then had that expire and gone back to the regular experience might know what I'm talking about as one example. Is that a good thing for our industry? So as I mentioned, we're not going to solve all these, but Outbrain's mission has not changed. We have one goal only since the company was founded 13 years ago. Help people discover great content. Over the last year, we've been rolling out a whole new experience. It's around 50% of our current network right now, in terms of page views. That experience is card-based, like you see here, and it's a feed of discovery. It's like, hey, if you can't beat Facebook, at least create an experience that people are familiar with on the broader web that's a lot like that. But we also, by the way, we've seen about a 40% increase in engagement on that feed-based experience relative to some of the prior kinds of formats we have that are a bit more static in nature. But it's not enough just to keep people happy and engaged online. We've got to help publishers. I think we all know the history here. Publishers' businesses are under tons of pressure. So we, over the last couple of years and going forward, are going to continue to double down on helping publishers grow their business. What that means is not only the direct revenue that we're driving for them through native advertising, but also putting cards in the feed like you see here on the right-hand side that are subscription-based cards. So we have the insight to understand whether or not a user has a propensity to want to subscribe to publishers' content. We'll put a subscription card in the feed, and we'll try to help the publisher diversify their revenue base. It's so important, in our opinion, for the future of the web. Last, and I'd argue, given the audience in the room, most important, we have got to put the power back in the hands of the marketer. What's great about our network, 70% of all the clicks we see on our network are the publisher's own content that we're personalizing for the user. What does that mean for a marketer? It means that the marketer now has access to insights about what that reader, that user, is really interested in. And not just on the publisher site where that ad might be running, but on all the publishers, the thousands of publishers that we work with today. So we put that insight, that interest in the hands of the marketer. Then, as you'll see this coming year, we're trying to bring new experiences to complement that interest, like carousel and like new video native experiences. And we wrap that all in the feed. So we feel like the web we need to create isn't just one constituent. These things, if we want to make this work, if we want to weave it together, we've got to focus on all three. It's got to be amazing content that we enable users to discover. We've got to help the publishers not only with a direct ad revenue, but grow loyalty. Keep users coming back. Help them grow all their sources of revenue, like subscription, like empowering the direct sales team at the publisher. And then last, we've got to put this power, this interest-based insights that we have access to, in the hands of all marketers, and then complement that with new experiences. So for us, this is the web we need to weave. This is what we're talking about in terms of the overall health of the web going forward. We're excited about what's ahead of us. We're excited about some folks in this room that we may be joining forces with in the near future to try to make this happen more quickly. And that was all I had. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer now or outside. Thanks.